In this episode, we speak with Snehal Antani, co-founder and CEO of Horizon3.ai, a cybersecurity company that delivers autonomous penetration testing through its flagship platform, NodeZero. Designed to run real attacks in live environments, the platform helps organizations proactively find, fix, and verify exploitable vulnerabilities before malicious actors can strike. The company recently raised $100 million in a Series D funding led by NEA, with participation from SignalFire, Craft Ventures, and 9 Yards Capital. The funding will support global expansion, enhance product innovation across autonomous security operations, and scale the company's presence in critical infrastructure and federal markets. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the managing partner of GrowthCap and the executive chairman of Market Insight Media. He is the host of Growth Investor, a podcast featuring today's best investors, executives, and founders. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover insights and strategies for accelerating growth and succeeding in business.
Snehal, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Good to see you again.
Likewise, great to see you.
Where we should kick off, I think, is obviously you closed a fairly sizable round, $100 million coming in from great investors. But maybe let's start out with what is the latest update on Horizon 3? And for the benefit of our audience, tell us kind of the leading solutions of the company.
Sure. So let me tell you the problem we set off to solve and why that's so valuable. So when I was a CIO, I had no idea I was secure until the bad guys showed up. Are we fixing the right vulnerabilities? Are we logging the right data in Splunk? And the answer is, I don't know. I either wait to get hacked or I pay a consultant to show up and test a small slice of my environment. And that just wasn't sufficient because when you have a really large environment, you've got to test everything because that's what attackers do. They see one large integrated environment. And so the question was, could we use AI as a force multiplier to comprehensively test your infrastructure? And in many ways, could we use AI to basically be a hacker? And this was pretty novel back in 2019, 2020, when we first started the company. In fact, I remember a number of seed and early stage venture capitalists basically saying this was impossible to go off and do. And here we are 5 years later, I've got over 3,000 companies globally using Horizon 3 in 30 or 35 countries. We've run over 150,000 pen tests. We run more pen tests a day than most global consulting firms run a year. Last year, we ran more pen tests than the entire history of computing. And every time we run a pen test, we collect training data through our telemetry. And that training data is every kind of messy configuration of a production system, how your cloud is configured, how your firewalls are configured, how your on-prem is configured, and so on. And this is training data nobody else in the world has, not the largest companies, not OpenAI, so on and so forth. And if you're an AI company, you're a training data company first. And so for us, pen testing has always been this sensor that collects training data, and that training data allows us to move into adjacencies and capture adjacent budgets. So for example, if I hack a server, well, I can start to run a threat hunt on that server to see if someone else has already hacked you. Suddenly I'm doing pen testing and threat hunting at the same time. If I hack a server, I can leave behind a fake AWS credential. So if a real bad guy shows up after me, they're going to get tricked into catching that sensor. Think of it as installing Ring cameras while breaking into your house. And so the whole idea, and I'll pause, is that an AI company is a data company first. We built this incredibly high velocity sales motion with a world-class product that's just growing quite well with great economics. And here we are.
I love this idea of fighting AI, or say bad AI, with good AI. And you've managed to do this quickly to figure it out. It does seem very complicated behind the scenes, which is why you got the doubtful responses in the beginning, but you've done it and you're scaling rapidly and customers love NodeZero. Now, is this something that it's so integral now to your customers that they could not foresee operating without it?
Yeah, that's definitely the case. And one of the best ways to measure that is through reference-based selling or referral-based sales motions. there is so much marketing hype in cybersecurity. And with LLMs and ChatGPT, every website and marketing flyer sounds the same now. The only way to cut through the noise is to get your customers to become radical champions and advocate and tell their friends and colleagues all about you. And that's exactly what we see. In fact, we've got this incredibly passionate collection of CIOs, CISOs, pen testers, blue teamers, and so on that I think wish they had Horizon 3 tattoos, which is kind of cool to see. So that's key to breaking through the noise. The second part is every time your environment changes, every time you patch a server, you install a new application or something, or add on a new employee, your attack surface has changed. And for every patch Tuesday, you want a pen test Wednesday. Every time you make a change, you want to run a pen test, because the longer you go, the more drift there is and the more likely you are to get attacked. Think of it as, there's a reason we brush our teeth every day. And, what happens if you just brush your teeth once a year? You're not going to be doing all that well from a hygiene standpoint.
Mm-hmm. One would think that your solution is most applicable to the most maybe sophisticated environments or the most complicated technology environments. In what sectors are you most relevant? And in what types of companies or organizations are you most relevant?
What's amazing is it doesn't matter if you're a Fortune 10 company or the local law firm, you have a mandatory pen testing requirement due to SOC 2 compliance or PCI compliance, or if you're in Europe, NIS2, DORA, or if you support the Department of Defense, CMMC. So third-party penetration testing is a mandatory recession-proof budget. And that was the budget we sought after to grab initially, where my primary competitors are basically mediocre consultants. And we're able to get after them using software to be better, faster, and cheaper. And so when you look at our customer install base, and I think this is what made us so attractive to growth round investors, was we really had that spectrum from really small local businesses all the way up to Fortune 10, Fortune 5 companies in every vertical. Now, generally speaking, the more regulated you are as an entity, the more compelling the requirement to use us. So healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, so on and so forth. All of these highly regulated industries become super important. The next part too, though, is Department of Defense. So the NSA Cyber Collaboration Center, they work with us. And in fact, I'm keynoting with their NSA DIB chief at Black Hat in a couple of weeks. They use us to help verify and improve the security posture of critical suppliers to the DoD. So not only are we helping companies defend themselves, we help them secure their critical suppliers as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, switching into the actual capital raise, what was the catalyst? I mean, you're growing quickly, you're achieving some efficiency in terms of the way you're managing kind of the cash flow. What prompted the capital raise? And it's a fairly sizable one, so presumably you know how to deploy that and continue to accelerate the growth of the company.
Yeah, exactly right. So in venture, the early part of a company is very R&D heavy. And that's exactly where we were. So in the first 80 or so million we raised, a large chunk of that went towards building the technology. It's actually a really difficult product to go off and build, especially with the right go-to-market motion and so on. Now we're in this phase where we've built that repeatable sales motion. We're able to scale go-to-market efficiently. We're entering new markets. And our biggest problem from a sales standpoint is missed at bats. We just don't have enough sales coverage globally to be able to grab every opportunity that's on the table. And so part of this fundraise is around continuing to scale go-to-market through our partners. Partners, value-added resellers like GuidePoint, MSSPs like Thrive, and so on. These guys, they all play a crucial role in scaling go-to-market in cybersecurity. They're their last mile of trust. So this partner-based sales motion is critical to our success, especially internationally, where resellers play a key role in different parts of Europe, different parts of Asia. So the first part of the $100 million was scaling through partners. The next part of that was continuing to invest in our product and evolving from pen testing to being a multi-product platform. This is some of the use cases I talked about earlier, expanding into web app pen testing, moving into legacy vulnerability management and disrupting the way legacy vulnerability management is done today. And then finally, being able to automatically fix stuff that we find. So think of this next generation of remediation, where if I find a misconfigured CrowdStrike instance, how do I automatically tune and improve the effectiveness of CrowdStrike so that CrowdStrike's customers are even happier? And then the final part of the use of proceeds is entering new markets. So expanding into APAC is part of that. Every time you enter a new country, there's a pretty big lift. But the other big one is winning federal. So we already have a FedRAMP High offering. We already support the NSA Cyber Collaboration Center, but now we want to make those pretty heavy investments into supporting secret and top secret networks and environments for ourselves and for our allies. Very heavy, expensive R&D build to go build that, but a pretty big long-term win if you can lock down those use cases and those opportunities.
Now, to better understand the market and the ecosystem, I'd like to touch a little bit more on the partners approach. Is it to understand it? I presume you're going to be connecting with partners of all sizes, say, for example, Accenture. If you partner up with Accenture, they've got massive reach across the globe. Is it a situation where if they're educated on Horizon 3, they can make this confident recommendation to their clients? This is the service that you need to be using, and that can unlock a part of your sales strategy.
Exactly right. You think about partners in 4 areas. What you just described are GSIs or global system integrators. NCC is an example. They're a great customer of ours, and they kind of hit that blend of GSI, but very boutique, specialized in cybersecurity and penetration testing. And we do a lot of great work together. And we've got 3 out of the 4 big fours already as customers also. And you're exactly right that they're more a consultative sale. So they'll use us under the covers as part of their assessment. And then their humans using our output can provide that virtual CISO advisory service. They can then cross-sell remediation services. They can cross-sell other security tuning services or SOC services. So we become this wedge that allows these partners to build high margin revenue on top of this. In fact, anecdotally, what we found is for every dollar of revenue they generate using us for assessments, they generate $10 to $20 of high margin revenue on top of us by selling bundled remediation services, bundled threat detection, bundled incident response, bundled vCISO. The next area is MSSPs. So think of people that basically manage SOCs or security operations centers. They'll OEM or bundle us into their offering, similar to how GSIs will do that. Marketplaces. So we've got some great work going on with Pax8 and AWS Marketplace to continue to increase our distribution reach. And then finally, value-added resellers, GuidePoint, Optiv, other players like that. What's great is we bring a lot of drag to other products. So if GuidePoint is selling Horizon 3 into an account, and we show that the incumbent EDR isn't very good, that creates a sales opportunity for GuidePoint to drag more product. Or we find that the incumbent needs to be fixed, then that helps GuidePoint protect their install base as well. And so we're very complementary with a ton of drag of adjacent products, which is why our resellers love us.
And you mentioned earlier how there's no other solution that's quite as advanced as what you're providing or offering to the market. What is the distance? Like, what's the lag? It's interesting to think about these entrepreneurs who have this early advantage and how long that lasts for. But you were early to the game. Any estimate of that moat in terms of the lead you have?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let's think about the moat in, I think, 3 areas. The first area is training data. If you don't have a training data moat, you don't have a moat at all if you're an AI company. As I said, I've got the largest corpus of training data in the world. And that training data was collected through blood, sweat, and tears, meaning there is no public training data set you can pull from. You had to actually run pen tests against production systems and collect the telemetry. I was on the phone with the CTO of a world-class, well-known pen test consulting firm. And for 20 years, they've only kept the PDFs of all their pen tests. They never kept every command issued. and every nuance of what was discovered. So they threw away all of this training data. So we have a massive training data moat, and there is nobody, not OpenAI, not any of the other big players, that is anywhere close to getting there. So if you're a startup, you've got this big training data moat you've got to overcome. So that's kind of number one. Number two is maturity of offering. When you look at the way that we've executed, once again, it's one thing to do bug bounty. That's actually a pretty easy problem to go solve because you have a standalone application. You're going to do a request response and see what happens. To pen test a production system is incredibly difficult. There are all sorts of nuances and edge cases and things that could go wrong and cause an outage. And so it takes time to really understand all of those edge case scenarios and build safeties into the product. And so just straight up product maturity, for us to go pen test an entire largest financial institution in the world in production right now, we feel confident we can do that. And it just takes a lot of time to get there. And then the final part is distribution. We invested a lot in building a partner-first go-to-market motion. And it's easy to say, but it's hard to stay true and actually be honest about it. A lot of companies will either treat partners as a secondary strategy or will cut partners out in order to squeeze a few extra points of margin on a deal. And by us being true to partner first, we've built a pretty passionate distribution infrastructure that allows us to scale up the way that we've scaled up. So if you take those three together, product maturity, training data, and distribution, I think those are the key aspects of a moat of a company that certainly is on its way to IPOing.
Mm-hmm. Now, given how fast you've been growing and the moats you just mentioned, you likely had a lot of suitors, investors that wanted to invest. You chose NEA as a big investor in this latest round. Tell us about your thought process around investors.
It's funny, I have to be honest, a love-hate relationship with investors. There are a small group of investors that have been in the arena. They understand that venture and startups have up cycles and down cycles, that the waters are not always smooth. And they are there with you to navigate those waters and win together. And with those kinds of investors and those kinds of board members, and I'm very lucky, and every investor that we've taken on, we selected for the board member first. Who is the board member that's going to be the right fit that's been in the arena? And the reason why that's important is you don't want to be hesitant in sharing news with the board member. Good news or bad news, doesn't matter, it's news. And you want to be able to bring in issues up as early as possible to preserve decision space so you can actually do something about it. So when you look at NEA as a firm, they're one of the most cycle-tested firms out there. They've been through up cycles and down cycles. They don't panic. When you look at Aaron Jacobson as a seasoned investor, when I had referenced him, the work he'd done at Databricks and elsewhere was incredibly well regarded. And you look at Lila, who joined the board as a technologist, and the work she did at Microsoft and elsewhere. Once again, very cycle-tested, very pragmatic, understands the up cycles and the down cycles. So for me, that small group of investors that are truly cycle tested are the key, most attractive folks to bring onto the board. Unfortunately, the large group of investors out there tend to be, and I crassly say this, freshly minted MBAs opining on how to run a company that they've never actually done before. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be very careful because the slightest change in wind, the slightest rough wave, and they're going to panic. And then they're going to worry about their reputation over the long-term, viability of the company and so on and so forth. And that's just a headache that at this stage of Horizon 3 in my career, I'm just not interested in dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Now, to do what you've been able to do in a short period of time, you must have an exceptional team. Can you tell us a little bit about your history with the team and how you were able to recruit them?
Yeah. So first, let's start, back with each of the individual board members, because that's important in building the right executive team. So Ilya Kurnos, longtime engineering leader at Google, who then started SignalFire, did our seed, our A, and our B rounds. And he's awesome. And then we brought on Mike Robinson, who was an acting CFO at No Name, kind of finance expert, leads the growth team over at Kraft. And then we brought in Nick Warner, who was the former president of SentinelOne. and helped scale SentinelOne from A to IPO and beyond. So very cycle tested operator. And now we've brought Lila in as the board member who, once again, comes from that deep technology background. And then myself as the 5 board members. And so I have this really great balance of people that have been in the arena with operational experience, covering engineering, technology, AI, finance, scaled go-to-market, and so on. So with that, we were able to bring together just a world-class executive team. So Matt Hartley, who's my chief revenue officer, is, I think, the best CRO in cyber that I've ever operated with or seen. He doesn't need an SC to do a demo. He can go very deep technically in the product as a sales guy. And the reason why that's important is it immediately raises the bar for every other rep you bring into the company. If the CRO can demo the product, why can't you? Why do you need the SC to go off and do everything? You're not here to just pay for steak dinners. So he's a bar raiser. And in fact, every single person we brought in on the executive team is a bar raiser in that regard. Tory for people, and so on. And so when you think about the executive team, I think about if the CRO, the CEO, and the VP people are able to work really well together, we can scale go-to-market, we can scale engineering. So I look at key relationships and key functions, but people, revenue, and finance and CEO tend to be the most important. But overall, I think our team as an executive team, and then as the senior leadership team, and then as the hands-on folks, there is no daylight, I think, between where we're going and what people are working on. And so that alignment is another key part of how we've been able to execute.
Excellent. Last 2 questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
I'll talk about a person, I'll talk about an organization more broadly. So I had this very unique opportunity to leave industry at the end of 2017 and go serve within Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC, within the U.S. Special Operations Community. And, my military experience going into JSOC was watching Jack Ryan and Tropic Thunder. Like, I didn't come from a military background. And I had this opportunity to sit there and learn from the greatest leaders the world will never know about. And when I think about the organization of JSOC, there are 3 aspects that are very special about that organization. First is, what makes people special in special ops is not that they can run far, shoot well, or swim fast. It's that they are learn-it-alls that can solve any problem as a team under pressure. And that DNA really is institutionalized at JSOC. And it's something I strive to replicate within Horizon 3. Like, we hire learn-it-alls. This is a startup. Your job today might be slightly different than your job tomorrow, and you've got to learn and adapt, and that's how we win. I think the other part is what made JSOC a high-functioning organization. They empower those closest to the problem because they have the most context. They enable them with the resources appropriate. The second key thing is that they ensure shared understanding across the entire organization. There is no distance of information between everybody. They all understand what's going on, because if there is a gap in information, something bad's going to happen to somebody. And the third is cadence for accountability. The way that they ran the cadence of the organization ensured you were held accountable for being prepared and making those decisions very quickly. So those are beliefs that I operated with. And I think as part of that, there's only one goal in JSOC, which is the mission. And so at Horizon 3, there is one goal for the ELT team. I don't have OKRs for the marketing leader, separate from the finance leader, separate from the product leader. We all get measured as one ELT because we're all in it together. And I think the final part is the JSOC commander I spent the most time with was General Scott Howell. One of the things that made General Howell incredibly inspiring as a leader was he was always the most prepared person in the room, or strived to be. And you knew he was the most prepared by the quality of the questions that he asked. And so he could ask a single question that was incredibly nuanced, and you knew 2 things. One was he understood the topic because he did his homework. And 2, you better have done your homework in order to answer that question. And so the power of asking the right question and being prepared as a leader elevates everyone's game around you. And so I think that has really set the tone for how I lead, because I've worked in organizations that didn't have those things, and I saw them falter. And so for me, long-winded answer is my experience at JSOC.
Fantastic. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Similar to my time in special operations, I had the privilege of serving on the board of an organization called Spookstock, which effectively helped to raise money to support the families of fallen operators within the special operations community. And it's something that I continue to find ways to contribute to. Just having had the privilege of being exposed to that world, you realize the sacrifice not only the operators make, but their families make. And when things don't go right in a mission and someone's hurt or killed, those families are left to deal with it. And so how do we as a community continue to rally and galvanize and mobilize resources to support and honor the sacrifice that those folks have made?
Well, Snehal, I want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today. It's truly been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much, RJ. I appreciate it.